Hello, everyone. It's Paul here, Brand Partnerships Director at the Bright Agency. I'm coming on for a quick live. I'm not entirely sure who will be tuning in because I'm not really sure what time of day it is, either in the US or the UK. Oh, I can see a couple of people joining. Hi. Feel free if anyone's got a question or anything, shoot it across and I'll try and respond. I'm here in Las Vegas at the Licensing Expo. I wanted to sort of chat a little bit more about what the Licensing Expo is, what I've seen here in the 3 days of the show, and what we've been working on. And I can also answer any questions that anybody might have. So the Licensing Expo is one of the biggest shows in the world. I was really lucky enough to go to the China Licensing Expo last year in Shanghai, and this feels kind of comparable, but in a way where I recognize a lot more of the brands at this one than I did at the Chinese one. There was a lot of Chinese brands and Chinese IP working there. So this is a marketplace really for brands, for licensees, for manufacturers, and for creators to come together and really talk about what they're doing in the licensing space. And that might be from big brands like a lot of present. Well, here we are. You see Peppa Pig there. You get a sense of the show. It's actually very quiet now. Lots of people have struck down their stands already and have headed home or maybe out to the pool because there should be some sunshine outside. That's certainly what I'll be planning on doing in a little while. Um, so everybody comes together, they're booking lots and lots of meetings. I've had, I think, over 3 days, about 25 meetings with people, talking about who we represent, but also what we do as an agency. If there are opportunities to represent other brands, other properties, other artists that are out there. There are people here looking for representation, and then there are lots of organisations here looking for brands to collaborate with in the licensing space, but also artists. And I think that's the one thing um, that I'll take away is that there are these enormous brands that exist. Peppa Pig. There's lots for Masters of the Universe, which for me that was the brand when I was a kid. I was a big He-Man fan, He-Man and the Turtles, and I've seen some Turtles stuff. There's lots of stuff out there. These big brands that have got 10, 20, 30, 40 years of heritage behind them. That are looking for licensees. So that might be ways to put their brand on clothing, on bedding, in experiential ways. Experiences is one of the fastest growing areas of licensing. And I think that's really interesting as people are looking to engage physically in the physical world with things, not just on the digital space or the virtual space or anything like that. People are looking at real life in person activity, and there's a lot of that going on, a lot of that being pushed here at the licensing show. But it's also about finding new brands and new artists. I think I've said this on a couple of my Instagrams this week, but one of the things I've really been struck with is how those heritage brands are still so big and still so important in the market. That's without question. And that ranges from those film properties, those book properties, TV properties, but also there's a growing sense for cultural organisations. Just got out of a meeting and was talking about the um, Museum of Fine Art Boston, which, living in London, I didn't have much of a sense of, but they do a hell of a lot of work there with them in the licensing space because they're not licensing the institution, they're licensing the art that that institution has. And if you've got a couple of Van Goghs in there, Bob's your uncle. You're aware. Oh, thanks, Camilla. Camilla sent me a nice message there. You're very welcome. So you can go from that, something that's been around for hundreds of years, even, and then be working. You can then see other brands that are really new. I've noticed a lot of Pembe the Pink Cat which was a Giphy brand that had got something like 3 billion views on Giphy and is now branching out into licensed product. So plush, um, stationery, that sort of thing. So I think there are so many different routes to market. This was something I put on my Instagram this week that something something like 52% of all Gen Alpha and Gen Z people have bought something off Instagram or TikTok, not even going into a store. So then you've got to think, oh well, what is that? What is that product that they're buying? What's their link there? What's their emotional connection to that? And it's not. It doesn't have to be about sort of retail theatre and it being in the shop. It's like what's there, what's available, what's now, what can they tune into in their interests. Um, but also this was something that was said early on in the show, and when I saw a talk about licensing trends, where the category in licensing for film and TV products is almost the same now as that product that comes from memes, social media, design, comics, anime. That's an absolutely enormous growing sector. So I think, if you're working on something and you've got that online following, you don't need to have a TV show or a film these days. You can do it from the online following. Anyway, so that's what Licensing Expo is. I've been here for 3 days. We were part of the networking ticket, so I got to meet lots of different clients, lots of different artists through that portal and have a chat with them. And it's been fascinating, as always. We're fairly young in our brand licensing journey at Bright, but we've got some really interesting artists, really interesting brands we're working on, and I think it's that thing where we will keep on plugging at these shows, and something will shift. I spoke to one licensing agent who said that they'd been pitching the same thing to the same people for about 3 or 4 years, and it was on the fourth year, eighth meeting or whatever, that something happened and it took off. So it's about that. This licensing can be a very, very slow process. You're waiting for that anniversary, or you're waiting for that film release, or you're waiting for that moment. But then on the other hand, it can also be really quick. It can be right. This is fitting the trend. We're in there now. This is what we want. Let's go for it. So that's my thoughts from the Licensing Expo. Hopefully we'll be back. I think it's fascinating. It's really fascinating now how quiet it is, and everyone's hitting the casinos, hitting the blackjack table. Yeah, thanks very much for joining me, for tuning in. I hope I've covered everything about the expo, what we're looking for. It's also been really inspiring connecting with potential new brands while I've been here, new artists that we can maybe represent, and working with people, that maybe come from a different part of the world, a different angle on art and art licensing, that could really work for us in future. So yes, one piece of advice that I heard, this was from the Osborns talking about the heritage of Ozzy Osbourne, was that the best piece of advice Ozzy ever gave them was, if you're supposed to be there, if you whatever time you're supposed to be somewhere, if you're not 10 minutes early, you're late. Very interesting. I don't think you would have thought that from the Osborns TV show. And the best piece of advice he ever gave was, if you said you're going to do something, do it. And I read that like, okay, if you've said you're going to do some new development work, if you said you're going to update your portfolio, if you said you want to do some research or a comp shop, get out and do it. Get out and see what other people are doing, and make sure that whatever you've got, whatever art that you're producing, whatever you're putting in your portfolio, it's up to date, it's working, and it's doing the best that it can for you. So anyway, thanks very much for joining me. That's me signing off from the Las Vegas Licensing Expo this year. Hopefully we'll be back. We'll certainly be at Brand Licensing Europe in London in the autumn. But yeah, I'm going away with lots to think about, lots of exciting new connections made, and hopefully a deeper step into the world of brand licensing for the Bright Agency. Watch this space. But thanks for joining, and see you all soon. Peace out.